Nobody at the Dubai Air Show expected the real headline to be hidden in the fine print. When Boeing stepped onto the stage and announced that Emirates had ordered 65 more 777-9s, valued at $38 billion, the room reacted exactly how you'd expect. Applause, flashing cameras, analysts scrambling to update forecasts. But the real story wasn't the aircraft Boeing sold, it was the one they hadn't built. Buried inside that announcement was a quiet commitment. A feasibility study. An aircraft that doesn't exist. A name that hadn't been spoken seriously in years. The 777-10. And that's where things started to get interesting. Because this wasn't just a bigger airplane. It was an idea that had already disappeared once. For years, Boeing had flirted with stretching the 777X family even further. The 777-9 was already enormous, the largest twin-engine jet in production. But some airlines, especially Emirates, wanted more. More seats, more density, more leverage in the long haul, hub game. And Boeing had technically proven, at least on paper, that a longer variant was possible. Then the problems began. Certification delays, engineering bottlenecks, the 737 MAX crisis, the 787 quality issues. The 777X program itself slowed under scrutiny. And quietly, the idea of the 777-10 faded into the background. Not cancelled, just not talked about. Until Dubai. When Emirates' chairman publicly expressed support for studying the 777-10, and even signaled interest in buying it if launched, that changed the tone entirely. Because when Emirates speaks, manufacturers listen. They operate one of the world's largest fleets of 777 aircraft. They hold nearly half of the 777X backlog. If anyone could pull a project like this back to life, it was them. But here's what most headlines missed. Stretching an aircraft by 16 feet isn't just about adding rows of seats. It changes physics. The proposed 777-10 would measure roughly 268 feet long, making it the longest passenger jet ever designed. Potential seating? Around 470 passengers, depending on configuration. No twin-engine commercial aircraft of that size exists today. None are even officially planned. And this only matters once you see what that extra length does to takeoff performance. Because in aviation, the real test isn't how an aircraft flies on a good day. It's what happens when something fails. For a twin-engine aircraft, certification rules demand that it must safely take off even if one engine fails at the worst possible moment. That single scenario drives runway length, climb rate, structural loads, everything. Add more weight, add more passengers, add more fuselage. Suddenly, the margins shrink. Boeing's engineers know this. They've already confirmed technical feasibility in the past. The 777X platform uses advanced composite wings. It has folding wingtips to fit standard gates. It runs on the GE9X, one of the most powerful commercial engines ever built. But power isn't the same as permission. A longer fuselage changes rotation dynamics. It affects controllability. It shifts center of gravity envelopes. Even with electronic tail skid protection preventing over-rotation, the bigger question remains. Can it clear certification rules without redesigning something fundamental? And this is where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Because engineering might not be the hardest part. The replacement market for aircraft with more than 350 seats is estimated at just over 1,000 jets globally. That includes aging Airbus A380s and older 777-300ERMs. On paper, that sounds promising. But most airlines prefer the 777-9. It's already large, already efficient, and less risky. A stretch variant increases capacity, but also increases exposure. More seats mean you need consistently high load factors to justify the economics. If demand softens, those extra seats turn into empty liability. So the decision becomes philosophical. Do you build the biggest twin-engine jet ever made because one airline wants it? Or do you protect the safer platform that already sells? Emirates complicates that question. They operate on a hub-and-spoke model through Dubai. Their strategy thrives on high-capacity aircraft funneling passengers across continents. For them, 50 extra seats per flight isn't incremental. It's strategic leverage. And they already have 277 77X aircraft on order. When a single airline controls 43% of your backlog, their voice carries weight. A lot of it. But here's the part no one can answer yet. Other airlines haven't publicly committed to the 777-10. Some may be watching. Some may be skeptical. Airports would need to assess compatibility. Slot-restricted hubs might benefit. Others might struggle with runway performance. So the question quietly shifted. It's no longer, can Boeing build it? It's, should they? Because launching a new variant requires billions in development, testing, certification, supplier coordination. And Boeing is only now stabilizing after years of reputational and financial strain. The Dubai Air Show wasn't just about orders, it was about momentum. Alongside the Emirates deal, Boeing secured additional 737 MAX commitments and highlighted defense partnerships. The messaging was clear. We're steady again. And then they floated the possibility of the longest passenger jet in history. Maybe that was confidence, or maybe it was necessity. If the 777-10 launches, it could redefine the upper boundary of twin-engine aviation. It could eliminate the remaining niche once occupied by four-engine giants like the A380. It could cement Emirates' strategy for another decade. But if the market hesitates, if only one airline truly wants it, the economics become fragile. Technical feasibility is established. That box is checked. What remains uncertain is appetite. And that's the part that no engineering simulation can calculate. Because sometimes the biggest question in aviation isn't how far an aircraft can fly. It's how far the market is willing to follow. And history hasn't always been kind to airplanes that were just a little too big for their moment. The Airbus A380 was once seen as inevitable. Airports redesigned terminals for it. Airlines built entire marketing campaigns around it. And yet, over time, the market drifted toward flexibility instead of size, toward frequency instead of concentration, toward twin engines instead of four. Boeing watched that shift carefully. The 777X family was built around that philosophy. Massive capacity, but with twin-engine efficiency. The 777-9 already pushes the upper boundary of what regulators and airlines are comfortable with. It carries up to 426 passengers in a typical three-class configuration. It folds its wingtips to fit existing gates. It burns less fuel per seat than the jets it replaces. It is, in many ways, the safe maximum. The 777-10 would step beyond that safety line. Not recklessly, not irrationally, but deliberately. 16 extra feet may sound small compared to a 268-foot fuselage, but in aviation, small stretches ripple through everything. Structural reinforcements add weight. Weight affects takeoff roll. Takeoff roll affects airport compatibility. And airport compatibility affects who can even buy the airplane. And here's the quiet tension inside Boeing's study. If the 777-10 requires significantly longer runways to meet single-engine climb requirements, it narrows its global usability. If it needs landing gear modifications to handle rotation angles, development costs rise. If it needs aerodynamic tweaks to maintain efficiency, timelines stretch. Every solution introduces a new trade-off. Boeing executives have framed the study around innovation. More range, more payload, more capacity. But innovation isn't free. It consumes engineering bandwidth, supplier focus, certification resources, and Boeing's recent history makes that bandwidth precious. After the 737 MAX grounding, regulators scrutinized everything. After 787 production pauses, quality control became a headline topic. The 777X itself faced certification delays that stretched confidence. So when Boeing even hints at launching something larger than the 7779, it isn't just a product decision. It's a signal that they believe the recovery is stable enough to consider expansion, a signal that they trust the regulatory environment to support a new stretch, a signal that they believe demand will justify the risk. But belief doesn't guarantee orders. Outside of Emirates, public interest remains cautious. Most global carriers are balancing fleet flexibility with long-haul recovery patterns. Many prefer mid-size widebodies like the A350-1000 or existing 777-9 configurations. They want adaptability. They want resilience against downturns. A 470-seat twin-engine jet demands confidence in sustained demand. And sustained demand is not something airlines assume lightly anymore. Yet there's another angle few people discuss: slot scarcity. At airports like London Heathrow, Tokyo Haneda, or New York JFK, additional flight frequencies aren't always possible. If you can't add more departures, your only option for growth is bigger aircraft. For airlines operating in those environments, capacity per movement becomes strategic gold. That's where the 777-10 could quietly make sense. One aircraft, 50 more seats, same slot. Multiply that across daily rotations, and the economics begin to shift. But again, only if load factors stay high. And this is where the entire story tightens around one airline. Emirates doesn't operate like most carriers. Their Dubai hub funnels passengers between continents in synchronized waves. High-capacity aircraft are not just operational tools. They are core infrastructure. Their brand, network design, and revenue model depend on scale. If Emirates commits, even conditionally, it changes the psychology of the market. Manufacturers don't ignore anchor customers of that magnitude. Suppliers don't either. Leasing companies pay attention. Analysts adjust projections,